Did earlier. I'm a proud father of 4, have 6 wonderful grandkids, love spending time with the family, and enjoy being outdoors, which is an understatement. Whether it's hiking, boating, music is a huge part of his life. He's very good on the banjo and the guitar, but most importantly, he does strive for the rhythm and music of his life to be one that's informed by his faith. Judy originally is from Honduras. Passionate about soccer, really passionate about soccer, and dedicated to empowering students in their academic journeys, because she's come full circle, having come in as a student and now she's here working. She works in the College Student Success Center as a success coach, where she supports and guides students to help achieve their academic and personal goals. In her words, she said, "My passion for sport and my commitment to my job allows me both the occasion to serve students and co-workers, hopefully effectively. Whether on the field or in the workplace, I believe that teamwork and dedication are key to helping achieve success." Let me introduce you to Randy Hollingsworth and Judy Lopez.
Hi everyone, it's good to see you. It's kind of dark, but I can see the glow on your faces from the candles there. So it's, again, I also want to thank Carly. Thank you for the invitation for Judy and I to share our story in the midst of these other stories that have been happening tonight. And it is, each of us have our own stories, and so tonight we want to give you a little glimpse of recreating a little bit of what happened in our own lives. But in my case, going back to the year 1990, my wife Jennifer and I had 2 boys at this point, and then we were welcoming into the world our 3rd child, our daughter Kara. And when she came into the world, we had the 2 boys and our daughter. And I remember my wife and I were both very excited about the way God had blessed us with boys and a daughter. And I pretty much felt like we were done. Chad, I can appreciate what you're talking about. And we were done at 3. I'm thinking, okay, you had a lot more larger number. But for us, I'm thinking 3 is good. That's a good number. Could we get too many more? We have no control over these kids. And so we ended up deciding that that was it. And yet I do want to point out that my wife, and she may not agree with this statement, but one of the reasons she really enjoyed working at the pregnancy center or the care center is the fact that she loves babies, and she is OCD about babies, because all the babies that are here tonight, she'd be going over wanting to hold them. And so she has this love for children. We're at church. I would usually work with the children's ministry, doing songs on the guitar, and she would usually go to the nursery and rock the babies. That's what she did. She loved the babies. Well, as time went by, we started talking about she still had this longing to have another baby, and we said, we're pretty much done, aren't we? And she finally came to the agreement, but maybe we are, and I'll just stop right there with that first chapter.
Sorry, Pops. My name is Yuri Lopez, and I'm originally from Honduras. And from the day that I was born until 16 years old, I grew up in 14 different orphanages. At 2 years old, that's when I got separated from my siblings, including my twin sister. But later on, though, I went to another orphanage. The orphanage started with 5 children, and then it grew up to 550 children. At the beginning, we didn't have electricity, there was no water, and if we had 3 meals, it would be more like a tortilla and salt. But one thing that I was so grateful to have was an education, because in so many of the orphanages in Honduras, the children did not have the opportunity to go to school.
Fast forward about 10 years, and our 3 children are now older, and we actually lived in South Florida. And at this time, we were very involved in our church. I was teaching at a college down there. My wife was teaching as well. And my wife came back to me and started talking about this whole baby thing again. And I'm thinking, babies are nice, but I like the ones you can actually play with, that you can take them out and do stuff with. And she loves holding those babies. She kept talking. This time, she started talking about the A word, adoption. And I'm thinking, Chad, this is where I'm thinking, I just keep thinking about the diapers and the long nights, and I'm thinking our kids are actually helping us do stuff sometimes. And so it's nice to have that, and I'm just thinking I'm not ready for this. And then I didn't realize, because I was just kind of nonchalantly just saying, no, we're not going to do that. And then the four of them, my wife and the three kids, they planned an ambush. And the strategic planning of this was to go to a restaurant that some of you may have heard. It's called Fuddruckers, and it's a hamburger joint, just great hamburgers. They're gigantic, and you get all kinds of neat things on those hamburgers, and that was my language. And I said, let's go. And all three kids and my wife, we all go there, but I didn't realize at the time, I knew my son was working at the DeMoss Foundation, the oldest son, Jake, and he had actually found some adoption paperwork that explained the process of adoption. I had no idea he was bringing those papers with him to Fuddruckers because I was all about the hamburger. And so they bring all the food, we're sitting there, and as we're sitting there, my wife and I on one side, the other three kids on the other, and all of a sudden, they swooped in, and they said, why are you so opposed to adoption? And I'm sitting there with my big hamburger thinking, I just want to eat my hamburger. That's it. And I really felt like the bad guy, but as I took the hamburger and I kept eating, I said, guys, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to adopt a baby. We're not going to do it. And they just looked at me and stared at me. And I said, plus, by the time we get the process, you three are going to be gone out of the house, so you're not even be around for all this process to happen. And so anyhow, at that point, I was just like standing firm. I was not moving. It would take a tsunami to move me toward adoption.
I remember during my years in the orphanage, I saw friends, like just their parents came, took him out of the orphanage, their uncles, their aunts, and I remember I was like, why everybody has been taken away? And I even remember a lot of them were even adopted. And I always I have the urge in my heart to have a family. But I remember just trusting and understanding that, hey, this is not my chance yet.
Some of you may remember, and again, a lot of you won't remember this, but in the year 2004, in December, there was a tsunami that hit Indonesia. Do you guys remember when that was in the news? It was a while back, but it was a big thing because so many thousands of people lost their lives in Indonesia, and it's just a huge wave that just wiped out all kinds of people there. And that year, our church, at this point, we're living here in Tennessee. I was here at Bryan College, and we were going to church just down the road. And as we were at this church, our church was going to do a relief mission and take some people to go to Indonesia and do relief work after the post-tsunami tragedy that had happened. And my middle son, Taylor, who actually at one point has worked at the care center here, he was in the EDGE program, the educational program, teaching here. But this time he was not in that role yet, and he was in high school, and he wanted to go to Indonesia and be a part of our church group going and doing relief work. And at the same time they're having this kind of debriefing about the tsunami trip that was going to happen, my daughter Kara was sitting with another friend, Stacy, at our church, and they were just sitting waiting for this meeting to be over. And I was outside talking with some other people as they're having the planning meeting. And Kara was talking with Stacy to another lady that was at the church. And she leaned over and said, you know, if they didn't have this tsunami meeting, it'd be great if they had a trip that would take some people to Honduras. Because in Honduras, my daughter Allison, who grew up in Saudi Daisy, when she was about 22 years old, she ended up going down to Honduras, working in an orphanage that had about 500 kids. And at that orphanage, she saw the abuse and the neglect, and especially when kids were out of, they take them out of the education, the school program about 9th grade, and they became workers in the orphanage, and a lot of abuse was going on in that facility. And Allison decided to come back to the States, raise some money, and then go back and start her own kind of a rescue, and she was going to call it Eternal Family Project. So the lady that was at the church talking to my daughter and her good friend Stacy was telling them about this organization called Eternal Family Project, started by a 22-year-old girl who basically took 10 young ladies out of that orphanage of 500, and she was going to take a little bit at a time and just see if she could help them get back into school, get an education, and help them to not go into gangs and prostitution and all the things that went in whenever they left the orphanage. And so Allison was the one who did that. And so my wife and my daughter started talking to me about, maybe we could go on that trip to Honduras. And I said, well, Taylor's going to the Indonesia trip. Well, then we found out shortly after that they canceled the Indonesia trip. And so then Taylor came and said, oh, y'all are going to Honduras? I said, no, we're not going to Honduras. I said, they were just talking about it. And then once again, the team got together and caused another ambush. And next thing you know, I've never been on a mission trip, and I'm in charge of it. And I'm taking my family of my son Taylor, my daughter Kara, my wife, and then Kara's friend Stacy, and 2 Bryan College students who joined us. And I've never been on a mission trip, but here we go. We get on the plane, and we fly to Honduras.
I remember being literally finishing 9th grade in the orphanage, and I can no longer continue my education because the orphanage didn't have financial support for my class to continue going to school. So due to that, I had to cook in the kitchen for 120 boys. But I remember one specific Sunday. I was only 13 years old. I went to the mountains in the orphanage, and I was just angry at God for the life that I was living. I was angry at him because he had separated me from my siblings, including my twin sister. I was angry at him because in my orphanage, if you were a girl, now a lady of course, you were not allowed to play soccer. But also I was just angry at him because I felt hopeless. I felt that I would cook for the rest of my life, and that was something that I didn't want to do. I wanted to do something better than that. And I remember going to the mountains in the orphanage, and I just screamed at God. And I even questioned him. And one of the questions I asked him was, how can a God like you, that many people say that you do all these wonderful miracles, have left me as an orphan? Another question I asked him was, if you are real, show it to me. Show it to me, because I don't see you here. And I remember that same day I had a Bible. And when I opened it, the first Bible verse I saw was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but plans to give you a hope and a future. And I did believe that that day, God had a plan for my life. In 2004, I moved from the orphanage, went to a different organization called Eternal Family Project.
And I met Judy for the very first time when we got to the airport and landed. Allison, the young lady that started Eternal Family Project, was the one driving the van and picked us all up. And sitting in the other front seat was this little spunky girl that had nothing but smart things to say to us. And she had one crazy, sarcastic remark after another. No matter what we said, she had a funny little comment. Now the thing is, Judy, as she sat in the front seat, the other girls, the other 9 girls, if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy lands in Oz and she's walking around and the little munchkins are kind of laughing and giggling behind all the little trees and everything, all the other girls, they stayed in the background and they're just kind of giggling, and Judy was right there in the front seat and she was talking to us, asking us questions, and she was also our translator, because as we were there, we were doing things like they didn't have any beds and they were sleeping on air mattresses. And so one of our jobs was to build bunk beds while we were there. And we also were building little cabinets to put their utensils and things in. So Judy ended up meeting my family that day in the van, and you said you had some first impressions of some of our family members?
Well, actually, so while they were in the trip, this is Taylor, the second oldest son. We had air mattresses at that time, and it was not the real mattresses. So I remember him being as crazy as I am. He took my air mattress to the ocean, and we were having so much fun, and he made a hole on it. So I had to sleep, unfortunately, for a whole entire week in the floor.
And you also mentioned about Taylor that somebody got stung by a jellyfish.
This is not a good story. One of Taylor's friends did that happen, and Taylor said, "Hey, this is a great idea. How about if I pee on his foot?"
And he did. He peed on his foot to help heal the jellyfish wound. But what we saw, my wife and I saw, we saw immediately this friendship and this sparring that was going on. like siblings between Taylor and Judy especially. And she immediately began to just hang out with us and doing some of the things that were with us as we were there for that trip. As we got closer to the end of the 10 days that we're there, it was just 10 days, but as we're getting ready to leave, I remember that Judy came up to us, and one of the things that she said, and she might want to explain what she said that day as we're getting ready to leave. What did you tell us as we were leaving that time?
I remember when they were leaving, they specifically told me, we will see you later, or we will see you soon. And I say, no, hasta never, which it means see you never. And the reason why I asked that to them was because in the orphanage, there was missionaries and volunteers that came, and they would tell us that they would see us later, and they never did. So for me, you know, like I had that in my heart, that I would not see them again.
And as we got on the plane, as we left, with those words ringing, hasta never, my wife and I, we started talking. We said, you know what? And it wasn't out of love and compassion. It was to prove Judy wrong, that we were going to come back. And she couldn't say hasta never, so we went back the very next year, and we said, hasta never. And at that point, what happened?
In 2007, the Lord gave me the opportunity to graduate from high school. And by God's grace, in 2008, in 2007, I remember it was specifically on Thanksgiving Day. I get a phone call, or I get, I did not give a phone call. I called the Hollingsworth family, and I said, hey guys, I'm ready to come to Bryan College. When are you guys going to bring me here?
And again, just an explanation on this. When she was there at the orphanage the second time and she was playing soccer with all the other kids, it was actually all boys and only Judy as the female playing, and she was striking all the goals, and they ended up winning the game. And I jokingly said to her, hey Judy, we need to get you to come to Bryan College and play for our girls soccer team because they really need some help. I wasn't thinking she really thought that she was going to come to Bryan College. But she hung on to that, and so a few years later, they started working on the paperwork, and the next thing I know, she says, I'm going to be coming to Bryan College, and I had to figure out a way to get her into Bryan College because she didn't have the scores to actually make it into Bryan College. And so I started talking with the previous president, Dr. Lavasay, and I told him her story, what happened, and Dr. Lavasay said at that time, he said, you know what, we're going to put her on probation, and we're going to let her come here for a year, and she's got more to teach us than we have got to teach her. And so she ended up coming, and she ended up coming here to Bryan College, and she ended up going and not only proving that she was a good student, she was on the dean's list every semester, and at the end of her time, she graduated, and the president invited her to be the commencement speaker when she graduated. So when she finished up, we then invited her to continue staying with us, but she ended up getting a job. She got a job down in Atlanta working with a ministry, a soccer ministry. And all this to say that we were down in Toccoa, Georgia, and just most recently we've come back. I found out I was having the opportunity to come back to Bryan College. Judy also came back with no job, but she came back anyhow, and she landed as the Academic Success Center, one of the workers here. And so she's actually been here for this past year, the same as me, and she has a better office than me. But I want to say that our story is not quite over yet, because she now is qualified. She's got her green card, and we went and actually asked in Honduras if we could adopt her, and the Honduran agency, the legal folks there said, after they're 14 years old, they're not adoptable anymore. And so we basically have grafted her into our family, and she's part of our family and has been a part of our family, but we're still trying to work on making the loose ends come together. So what's coming up in September?
So in September of this year, by God's grace, after 18 years of waiting for so long, I will have the blessing to have my citizenship, if the Lord allows it. But also too, I will officially, I don't know if I said it right, switch my name from Judy Lopez to Judy Hollingsworth.
We want to thank you all for allowing us to tell our story, and the reason we were doing the back and the forth is the idea that we were separated and we've come together, and Judy is truly a part of our family. And Carly actually told me the other day when I said we haven't been able to officially adopt her, But then Carly mentioned, she said, well, once she becomes an American citizen, she's then able to be adopted even as an adult. And so we just found that out from Carly. And so we're actually not just trying to legally change her name, but even to officially adopt her in our family, even as an adult. So we're looking forward to that. And that is our story. Thank you, guys.